This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news and intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversations. 96.9 FM. This program contains mature content and may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the management and staff of Guardian Radio.
Found out I was in menopause in the most horrific way. I was diagnosed with with herpes instead of a menopausal symptom. And that got me awakened to the idea that if I had this little information, I wonder what millions of other women don't have.
Yeah.
And I know that I said, I'm going to stand up for me. And when I stand up for me, I know I'm going to help other people. And then it just started snowballing. And I realized that only we women can destigmatize this by talking about it.
Yes.
Making it okay, talking about it with our husbands, our partners, our sons, our co-workers. We have to give them permission to talk about it also.
And aging is okay, I say.
Yes.
Aging to me is living.
It's a privilege.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's a privilege
I think
to
so
age,
too.
right? And we
So
have
what
to,
are we holding on to? Yeah.
Well, we have to stop, as we age, we have to stop believing that we have to stay eternally 30. We're turning into monsters, trying to stay eternally 30. We have to realize that we're greater than the shell that we're walking around in.
Yeah.
And when men age, they become wise. They become silver foxes. We just get old.
Yeah.
Right? We have to change that, though, as women.
Yeah.
We have to decide gracefully and naturally and stop trying to diminish ourselves and stay forever young. It's just not possible.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kendenique Campbell-Moss, and we're here on Kenny's Corner this evening. And our conversation is going to take a different turn. The conversation this evening is going to be about life and how it affects us and the different stages of life that we go through. A lot of women are perimenopausal. They are in full-blown menopause. They have had hysterectomies, they have had myomectomies, they've had a series of things. And in this society, we don't necessarily talk about what is important, but we major in the minor. Perimenopause affects so many of us, but so many of us don't want to have the conversation. A lot of time, there's a lot of xenophobia and ageism. You see young women saying, oh, the old girls, blah, blah, blah. And then the older women, like I am, we're more seasoned and we're saying, you wish you could be at this stage. Because if you really think, for all intents and purposes, some of the young women that say, oh, road to 30, they've looked like they've been on the road to 30. Whereas you have women that are in their 40s and their 50s, and we are looking well. We are hydrated. We are moisturized. Our sex lives are good because sex at a particular age gets even better because you know what sex is at a certain stage. You know what it is that you want from your body and from your partner. And last week we were on Facebook and I was just scrolling and I think it was Rosemarie's post and somebody mentioned menopause and I chimed in and I said, this is a conversation that nobody wants to talk about. And little did I know that there was somebody on the thread that had so much information about menopause. I mean, she is the menopause whisperer, if you like. I put out the clarion call a few days ago when I spoke with Miss Patrice Lockhart, and I was able to get some persons to send me messages. A lot of them are very, very sexual because it seems as if though they only think that menopause and perimenopause affects us sexually, but it doesn't. It affects us in terms of our brain fog and our night sweats and our mood swings and our depression. For someone to just understand what we're going through, do we have a community to get us through what happens? And so I've invited Miss Patrice Lockhart this evening to have this conversation with us. Patrice, are you there?
Yes, I certainly am. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for agreeing, Patrice. And it was, I think nothing happens by chance, right? It was divine order because this is
Divine,
May,
yes.
divine order. This is May, and this is the month for our mothers. As a Roman Catholic, we say our Hail Marys and we abide by what our denomination has set down. But Patrice, I will tell you that there are so many questions. I hope we get through all of them now. I want you to give for us a brief introduction, Patrice, in terms of what you do for a perimenopausal woman and a menopausal woman. Tell us what happens. Like, walk us through that. I'm going to give you 40 seconds to walk us through that so that I can get through all of these questions.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. As a menopausal health coach, I work with menopausal women going through the transition. I help them to navigate the menopausal transition. Unfortunately, in our country, 99% of the women in this country enter the menopausal transition clueless and unprepared changes their bodies will go through, and they are full of a lot of myths. Um, Menopause is a natural transition in a woman's life. It's not a medical condition. It's not a malfunction. It's not a disease. We suffer from not knowing or lack of understanding what is a natural process that happens in our life. Menopause happens on 3 levels. The first stage is perimenopause. We go into perimenopause when we hit around 40, around 41. Though there are women whose body goes into it earlier, but normally the average age women's body kick into the perimenopausal transition is in her early 40s. And what happening then is that she is on the last 8 to 10 years of the eggs that she came into this world with. When she gets into that stage, whether she feels it or recognizes it or not, and most women do not even know when their body kicks into that transition. Sometimes it's a little change in the period. Sometimes, like for me, I was studying menopause and we were doing a session, and I remembered it was about 40, 41. I remember my period stopped from being I had the period coming on 3 days all my life, all the same time in the beginning of the month. I could depend on that. Then all of a sudden, I recognized it started to move, and then going on to the middle of the month. What I did not know, and I didn't know what was going on. I just thought, that's different. But everything else was normal, and that happened. It wasn't until I was doing my studies that I realized, oh my goodness, that's when my body literally kicked in and went into the perimenopausal phase, which was the last 8 to 10 years before I stopped bleeding. Then a woman goes into menopause. Menopause is actually 1 day. A woman does not experience menopause until she's had 12 full months of not bleeding. Once you've gotten there, you are officially in menopause. That happens between 51 and 58 years of age globally. Now, there are some differences like with Black women. When I first started working with menopausal women in the country, I had a lot of women I found were ending around 49. And research shows in America and Latino women, they end a lot around that age. But I have been finding throughout the years, though, on average, our women end between 50 and 54 years of age. That's the average that I have been finding throughout the years. Our women stop bleeding. And then postmenopause. Postmenopause is that stage where the body's no longer producing this powerful hormone called estradiol. And the body then goes through this transition of it's getting used to not having this powerful hormone called estradiol. And when she kicked into our body during puberty, she became attached to helping the body with so many functions. She helped your brain, and I call her a she, estradiol, because she's like a woman, very dramatic, full of drama. She helped the brain. She helps your brain to function. She helps your joints to function. She helps your bone to function. She helps your muscles to function. She helps the vagina to be what it's supposed to be. She even helps with our auditory system. There's so many things that this powerful form of estrogen helps with the body. And in a synopsis, that's menopause and the 3 stages of menopause.
That is a whole lot of that is a whole lot of transitioning.
Yes.
I think that when you sit down and think about what has to happen for a woman and all of the changes that a woman goes through, that is monumental. But let me ask you this question, Patrice. Is it when okay, so when you say the hormone estradiol and all of these other hormones that the body may not be getting on a basis, does hormone therapy help with that? Is there something organic? Does it always have to be in a pill form? What can be done to replace this what has been lost?
Okay. First of all, before we even talk about replacing or what can be done, I always tell women the first thing we need to do is to become educated about what's going on in the body. Too many times we're looking at a pill or we're looking at something to make it stop. This is a natural transition in a woman's life. The same way you came into this world as a baby, then you moved into being a toddler, then you moved into being a child, and then an adolescent, then you moved into being a reproductive young adult. It's the same way you are scheduled to end the reproduction. But if we do not understand what is going on, we are going to have what we have now that menopause is coming to the forefront. And let me tell you, menopause, just like nature, how nature has its own perfect cycles, winter, spring, summer, fall, so is the life of the woman with the stages. And the thing about nature, when nature screams, but nature does not whisper about its examples of for us as women. When we look at the first thing when we look at nature, let's look at the caterpillar. The caterpillar unassuming, slow crawling on its belly. It goes through a stunning transformation. And then it becomes a stunning winged beauty. It could fly. This is nature telling us that transition can happen from renewal into rebirth, from a dying to a rebirth. And nature has so many examples that tells us that transitions, that cycles, they're all normal and they are what we call divine. When we look at the seed is another example where nature tells us that the seed goes into the ground, it grows up to sprout out, then becomes a tree. It produces fruits and fruits that have more seeds. And here nature again is telling us about another cycle of renewal. And when we look at nature, as nature gives us so many examples as women, we learn that transition, cycles, change, they're not a curse, they're not as punishment, or they're not as loss. Transition comes to take us to another level. But we have to understand that. And as menopausal women, understanding that this change didn't come to take your vitality. It didn't come to destroy you as a woman. It came to take you to the next level. And I say all of that to get to your point about what is needed. When we understand our bodies, we understand that this powerful form of estrogen called estradiol has depleted by the time we get to menopause and postmenopause. And yes, there are things that we can do. There are three forms, and I, as a menopause, say this: there are three forms that you can deal with menopause. One, you can deal with menopause naturally. And again, which I always recommend. I deal with clients here in the Bahamas, in the USA, and the Caribbean. And I can tell you, dealing with it naturally is your first means of defense. But you must understand what's going on, because your body's not sick. Um, you need to understand what's going on. And the next way that a woman could deal with menopause is what's called bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. That is another step up from natural. They use natural means. They use it from soy. It's the hormone. They use the soy product or the soybean for bioidentical hormone replacement. And then there is the synthetic hormone replacement therapy that was introduced in the between 1930 and 1940. But
Patrice, 1 second. We have a caller on the line. I don't want to lose the caller. Can we take this caller, please, Chris?
Am I on?
Good evening. You're on. Hello.
What it is talking always along with you, Kenny.
Hi. How are you?
I'm holding, thank God. I have a
Wonderful.
question for you. The question
Go ahead.
is, here it is. It goes with a comment. Some women has children, right? Born children upward to 60, 62, right? But some people are saying nowadays women doesn't go that far. Like you just expressed a while ago, I think you said 40 or somewhere around there, right? Now my question is, how come some women would have children when they're 60, 62 years old, okay? But today some people carry on as if as though women doesn't go that far as 60, 62 years. Explain that to me, please.
Okay, great question. Women, as long as a woman is bleeding, she has eggs. There is something called menopausal baby. A woman now, I've had a number of women I've dealt with who have been in there. In fact, I just had a session the other day, and I had a 65-year-old woman who was bleeding. We have women, in fact, in this country, this lady who was in my session just the other day, she was the second 65-year-old woman who I have met who was still having a period. There was one lady from San Salvador. She bled until she was in her 70s. And then when I was in Grand Bahama, I did some sessions in Grand Bahama. I met two ladies who were in their late 60s and still bleeding. There are anomalies. And here's what happens.
Why I came up with that question, right? In your monologue, you speak as if as though it were out of the door to have a child when you were 60, 62 years old. But I remembered women had children when they were 60, 62 years old. I always remember. That's why
let me explain that.
So thanks.
Okay, good. I got you. As long as a woman has eggs, she can have a baby. When a woman stops bleeding It means that she's used up all of the eggs that she's come to this earth with. She no longer has any eggs. Now, we do have women, just like I explained, they bleed until much later than some women. Then we have the anomalies where, just like you said, we have women in their 60s. I remember growing up in the inquiry seeing women in the 60s having babies. And what happens is women can still, there, what is on record is that there have been women, let's say in their 60s, who would have had a baby, who would have thought they were finished. And what research and science has shown is that sometimes women would have an egg just there left, and she could get pregnant. So that is known as menopausal baby. They call, the term is called a menopausal baby. That does exist. That women would have one or two eggs left, even though they've stopped bleeding, and it does exist as well. Why women can still have babies later, that women are still bleeding, and these women tend to hide it. Each of these women, I can tell you, as I talk to these women who bleed late, this, like I said, the lady who just went to a session I had the other day at 65, she was wondering if she was normal. And I was saying to her, no, you are very fine. Your body knows what it's doing. If you still have eggs, you will still have a period. When you've used up all your eggs, you will know it. I hope that helps to answer your question.
I think maybe we may have lost him, but I do have some other questions here for you, Patrice.
Okay.
These questions have just, well, I mean, in addition to what's already here, why does no one talk about perimenopause and menopause?
Okay.
Why doesn't anyone talk about the fact that it can make sex painful, or your libido disappear, or your body feel like it no longer belongs to you? And what can we do to get our pleasure back? That's one question. And then this is another question.
That's a long one. Okay.
Yeah, this is another one. Kenny, I heard your opening comments, and I want to say to you, as a woman of a particular age, and I'm not ashamed, I'm 55, and I have a 45-year-old lover. My husband is deceased. I want you to know that at 55, you're just getting into your groove. I went through menopause. I guess this must be perimenopause. I went through menopause at 35 years old, and now at 55, I'm free. I don't have to worry about when I can wear white. I don't have to worry about having sex and becoming pregnant. But I want you to make it very clear to these young ladies that are out there that ageism is very tired. And to be quite honest with you, we look better than half of them. Okay, all right, that was not a statement. But let's go back to this question. Why doesn't anyone talk about how perimenopause and menopause can make sex painful? Your libido disappears, or your body feels like it no longer belongs to you. And what can be done to get your pleasure back? I must say too, I went to my OBGYN today, right? Because it's annual physical time, and she was having a conversation and saying that coconut oil is organic. I don't know if she said organic, but I know she said coconut oil. What is the thing with coconut oil?
Oh, listen here. It helps with intimacy. Well, let me go back to your question so I can answer all of it, and I will bring in the coconut oil. The reason why menopause, no one has talked about it, is because you need to understand the history of it. And because when I went into menopause and I learned, because I had 8 years of dealing with menopausal symptoms, going through hell, been through 8 doctors, no one told me I was perimenopausal, didn't know what was going on. When I began my research and my questioning here in our country, I couldn't understand why. But one of the things I learned after I did my studies was that I needed to understand, you have to understand menopause historically. When you understand menopause historically, you understand why we think menopause historically was poorly understood and often stigmatized. During the ancient and medieval times in the 1500s, during the time of Hippocrates and other physicians, they believed that menopause was closely linked to the uterus. and that it was not recognized as a medical condition, but a part of aging. Then, when we went down into the 1500s to 1700s, menopause was viewed as a disease that made women irrational. Now, this is what they thought about us: depressed and useless due to our inability to reproduce. Women were marginalized and they were stigmatized, and menopause was to have made women unpredictable and emotionally unstable. Then, when we moved into the 1800s, menopause was seen as an hysteria inducing event that could lead women to mental instability. And it was during that time women were placed in mental asylums or considered unfit for public life. This is the history of menopause. And there was a book written in 1857 by a doctor called Dr. Edward Tilth. And he called the book The Change of Life in Women. He introduced the idea that menopause was a failure of the ovaries. And I'm going through this so you can understand the way menopause was thought and talked about and why we are here where we are. Then when we got into the early 20th century, between 1900s and 1950s, menopause was continued to be looked at as a need for medical intervention. And it was during that time that hormone replacement therapy was introduced, tranquilizers and antidepressant were prescribed, and hysterectomy during this time was used as a cure for menopause. Then when we got into the 20th century, that's between 1950 and 1990, menopause was more openly discussed and largely seen as a deficiency disease. And there was another doctor, Dr. Robert Wilson, in his book in 1966, Feminine Forever. He promoted hormone replacement therapy as a cure and a tragedy. Well, let me put it right. To keep women youthful and the tragedy of menopause. It wasn't until this age now that we are now more openly discussing menopause. So you want to know why we haven't been talked about it? Look at the history. One of the research showed that because our physicians back in the day were all males, they did not understand what a woman was talking about. And it was hard for them. So they literally, menopausal women were marginalized. Now, to answer the other part of your question as to how it affects our sexual life, the estrogen is our sex hormone. It's the hormone that makes us a woman. Just as the testosterone is what makes a man a male man. Now, as women, we have testosterone too. Our estrogen works along with our testosterone to give us our sex drive. And because a woman is going through so much hormonal fluctuation, right now, your hormones could be at a height. 5 minutes from now, it's sink down. Then it'll rise back up. Our hormones are fluctuating so much. And so because the estrogen affects our vagina that nobody told us about, it impacts women in a number of ways. A lot of women are dealing with vaginal dryness, itching, that itching that they call it the sweet itch, that burning where they will scratch themselves and can't stop that itching. They lose their sex drive. A lot of women are leaking. They are leaking urine and they are leaking feces for some. Then we have a lot of women who are just wetting up themselves. I do some sessions called my pelvic floor sessions. And these are only for the women who are dealing with the pelvic floor issue. We have women who just they can't help themselves. They just urinate. And we have women who literally walking around with posies and pads to help themselves cope socially. Then we have women, all of a sudden, there was a time in their life when they could hold their urine in. Then now they have to be running to the bathroom. And many times, even though they're running to the bathroom, they wet themselves before they're able to take their panties down. And that's all because of the same decline of this hormone called estradiol. What she also helps a woman to do, she keeps our vagina, our pH level for our vagina, what it needs to be. She keeps us lubricated. And when your estradiol begins, or your estrogen begins to decline, and again, unfortunately, it impacts the lubrication of our vagina. It also impacts the or what do you call it, the microbiome of our vagina. Many women also deal with UTI, especially women in postmenopause. Consistently, they're dealing with UTIs, and that's urinary tract infection. And that's because the estradiol protected us. It protected us from a lot of that virus. And when we no longer have that, for many women, they lose their sex drive because down there is very dry. They lose their sex drive because many times their testosterone levels take a nosedive. They lose their sex drive because many times they're putting on this weight, all this weight around the middle section. They're uncomfortable. This body that they now have is not the body they used to have. And for a lot of women, they feel like their body has betrayed them because they used to be able to exercise and lose this weight. And all of a sudden, now I'm dieting, I'm exercising, and I'm not losing the weight. In fact, I'm putting on weight. And all of this is women need to understand that, again, menopause affects your vagina, and in more ways than one. But there are natural means, and that's what I work with women with. I work with women, and I can tell you, I have helped many women get their libido back. I have helped many women throughout the country, throughout the Caribbean and the US, their bodies naturally get their hormone balance again. But yes, it can affect your sex drive, and it can, again, now we talk about coconut oil. Yes, coconut oil is amazing to help lubricate their vaginas. What I tell women is that what happens is our skin down there, a menopausal woman's vagina, the skin down there becomes thin and becomes very thin and brittle. And so intercourse is many times very painful for women. And I tell women, the same way you take care of your face and your hand, you will moisturize your face if your face is dry. You will moisturize your hand if your hand is dry. Well, the same thing you need to do with your vagina. It's still skin. It's now thin. It's now it's gone through a lot. And that drying is what you need to do. The coconut oil naturally works to help heal the skin. It's antiviral, antibacterial, and it also helps with intercourse. And I tell women that you do it a couple times a day. And one, it helps to heal the skin down there because you've got to take care of the skin. And I call it your queendom. You've got to help now take care of your queendom because she needs some help. So coconut oil, and I have something called Graceful Garden use. There's so much help. And I tell women, you have more control over your menopausal transition and your issues than you think. It's a matter of education.
Patrice, I have like 7 questions here. Where do I get the coconut oil? And what is the garden stuff? Where can they get the garden stuff?
Okay, the Graceful Garden one, you can give me a call 439-3242. That
Right?
number again, 439-3242. It's a formula I created for women, and women have been using it, and they would say, "Oh my God, it makes a difference. I don't have the issues anymore. I'm able to heal. I've been healed. It makes intimacy so much easier." And the
Okay.
coconut oil, if somebody chooses coconut oil, you can, as long as it's organic, as long as it's organic. But the Graceful Garden is more comprehensive because it helps with the moisture, it helps with the healing, it helps with the lubrication, all in one. And
Okay.
again,
There's another question, Patrice, because this question is how is it used? The question is, Miss Patrice, how is it when we buy?
listen here. Uh, you use it. I tell women you can use it like twice a day or 3 times a day, depending on what's going on with you. When you get up in the morning and after you've taken your bath, you lather your queendom, ladies. She needs your help. Then, when you come home in the evening time and you've taken your bath, you do it again. Again, your queendom, she needs you to look after. You will find that the skin will be so much easier, so much less painful. In fact, the pain will go. In fact, and what you'll find, even that itching. And then, of course, like I said, the lubrication. So women can, the women, my number is 439-3242. Just text Graceful Garden, and then I can get to you
Okay,
because
so Patrice,
it does help.
there's another question, right? So you mentioned the lubrication, but this question reads, should I wipe it off before sex?
No,
No.
no,
Okay, so now
no.
let me read these other questions for you. Um, what is the real cause of crushing fatigue that hits during perimenopause and menopause? Even after a full night's sleep, what
Mhm.
remedies, holistic or medical work? Patrice, thank you for this opportunity to speak to us. So many women that are sitting here in this office. We're still at the bank. We're tallying some of our worksheets. But so many of us are perimenopausal and in full-blown menopause, but we are afraid to have the conversation. Thank you for this. We are on Rosetta Street. I guess I don't know where that is. Okay, this is another comment for you, Patrice. Kenny, you bring the conversations that we need to have. A lot of times we women can share so many things and bring so many of us out, but nobody wants to have the real conversation. My
Mhm.
mom died. My
Mhm.
mom died 3 weeks ago. I'm in my first trimester of having a baby. I don't have anyone to have this conversation with. My mom didn't have any sisters. She had no siblings. So I can only rely on my external family. But thank you for the conversation. This next text reads, is it true that hormone changes can affect eyesight and cause dry eyes or blurry
Oh
vision? And
yes.
why don't more doctors connect these symptoms to menopause? It's alarming that most doctors don't connect this when it seems as if though there's a vast population of female doctors in the Bahamas. Okay, Patrice, I have to read these questions because they are frantically coming in. Um, Kenny, thanks for the sex talk this afternoon. Patrice, did you bring any of the garden to the studio? Patrice is not in studio, people. I have a broken ankle, so Patrice is not in studio, but we will be in studio very shortly. As soon as I can get up the stairs, we will be in studio. But Patrice's number is 439-3242. This is another question, Patrice. Comment, this seems as more of a comment actually. Uh, why is it that women perimenopause and menopause seem to be one and the same? You have younger, you have older, you have women that are in the society. We make up so much of the society and we are the birthing mothers of the universe. Why is
Yes.
it that we can't have a real conversation? But like my dad always says, We talk about black crab syndrome, but it's women's syndrome because another woman would never want you to rise to the top. We talk about shifting each other's crowns, but are we really shifting each other's crowns, or are we hiding the crown and
Uh,
pretending that we are actually helping?
mm. Oh,
Okay.
listen, those questions are a mouthful. And just talking about the support, I am this country's first menopause health coach in the Bahamas and the Caribbean. And the reason I did it was because of my crazy experience. And like I shared with you, and I'll share briefly, when I went into perimenopause, I didn't know what was going on. I was putting on weight, I was dealing with anxiety, and I wasn't sleeping. For about a year, I was having sleep issues. Then I went into 6 weeks of sleeping for under an hour. And by this point, my brain was acting crazy. I was seeing like the old black and white television screens that we used to have back in the day. I was seeing like those lines and then bits and pieces of a movie for 6 weeks and sleeping under an hour. Then that turned into day, then night, then day, then night, then day, then night of not a wink of sleep. I was wired. I was a mess. I didn't know what was going on with me. And to be truth, going through, I was dealing with rejection as well. I was in a marriage relationship where I literally was being rejected. And a family member during that time literally came to my aid and took me. And for 2 weeks, she took me in a home and she cared for me. When I say I was lost, I couldn't tell you day from night. It was a horrid experience. Horrible.
I think I can relate to your horrid experience because my mom left March the 5th, 2024. And I think I made a mistake in some instances, Patrice, because when mommy left, when mommy left that day, I had to take my daughter off the island the very next day to get her eyes tested. And so
Mhm.
when it was time to get mommy dressed and put on mommy's clothes and everything at the funeral home, I was there. And I saw her on the slab. I saw when they pushed her in that little hole. And
Mm.
the sleep for many months didn't come. And it still
Mm.
isn't regular now. But when you close your eyes, you have a tendency to see the person on the slab.
Mm.
Or when you think about like, I know that this is weird, right? But you're already in the person's already in the coffin, but you're
Mhm.
thinking, oh God, if they close this coffin on mommy, like what would like how will she be like? I don't know that it
Mhm.
makes any sense, but that's just my thought pattern. But the sleep, I'm perimenopausal, and I'm not ashamed of that because I look damn good. And I
Oh.
feel good in some instances, right? But I have no problem with getting the garden stuff from you because I may need it.
Mhm.
But I will say
Mhm.
to you that we don't talk about what needs to be spoken about, and the grief doesn't leave you. And so you're dealing with
Ah.
perimenopause, you're dealing with divorce, you're
And
dealing with
stress. I
stress, you're
tell
dealing with
women
children,
stress
you're
and
dealing
man up does it's a poor marriage because
right.
your adrenal glands will produce cortisol. When I stopped sleeping, there's so many things that brought me to this point because there was no one to help me during those 18 years, those 8 years rather. I went to 8 doctors in Nassau and Grand Bahama. It was it was hell on wheels. I'm gonna be honest with you. I even and sometimes I don't like to share this part of my story, but maybe someone needs to hear this because the other day we had a menopausal woman who tried to commit suicide. And that same night, I had to work around, do a consultation nearly 9 o'clock with another menopausal woman who just had it because menopause affects us on 3 levels: physically, mentally, and emotionally. And we like to hide the emotional and mental, but it's real. And it's also real in the workplace. That's why we have a lot of things going on in the workplace that people think this woman is being difficult or whatnot. No, she menopausal. And then we got to be hiding it. Um, because you haven't slept for days, you're tired, there's so many issues going on with you, but you have to function like nothing's going wrong. You're forgetting. You're dealing with fatigue. You have you're not focusing and concentrating like you used to, and if your job depends on it. One accountant told me, listen, I can't even, she couldn't even go to her superiors to talk about it because it's not dealt with in the workplace. And her thing was, so much depends on the numbers right. But I'm dealing with fatigue, menopause, fatigue. I'm dealing with forgetfulness. I am emotional sometimes. I swing, I'm irritable one minute, the next minute, I women go from one end of the spectrum to the next. But the goal as menopausal women, the ladies, right, we need to talk about it because I have been raising this clarion call, and I hope every woman listening, if you, I would host another session if we have enough women from listening to host another session. I have been hosting these sessions, and my mission is to educate our women. Somebody talked about fatigue. Why do we have the fatigue? It's because of the hormonal imbalance. Your body from puberty up until you went into perimenopause has been used to one level of hormones doing what it has to do. And then, so all the other systems in your body, everybody okay, because everybody working in tandem. But when the hormones go up today or this moment, all of the body functions have to deal with that and work in tandem with that. Then if it moves down, the body functions from the heart to the blood pressure to the nervous system. A lot of women's nervous system are irregular during this time because of the change, the hormonal imbalance. And so it fatigues the body. I tell women, even though we think we're super women, this is the time our bodies are going through so much. And women wonder why they're frustrated. Women wonder why they are irritable at their husbands. Women wonder why things aren't working out. And sometimes you're not sleeping. Or it's because of what's going on in your body. Your body literally is going through a transition that is not easy. Your brain. The reason women have hot flashes and night sweats and dizziness and headaches and nausea is because there's a part of our brain called the hypothalamus that takes care of temperature control. And when that part of your brain is getting incorrect information, it's all over the place. And so women get hot flashes and they're sweating, or sometimes they're dealing with this. They're trying to figure, why am I feeling nauseated, this dizziness or this headache? You're menopausal. Then there's another part of a woman's brain called the amygdala. That's our emotional center. And many times when I talk to both men and women, or I do a session with men and women, I tell men, listen, when you see her acting the fool or playing crazy, trust me, it's not because she's trying to be difficult. Her emotional center of the brain is not getting the support that it's been getting all its life. You're at one point, from puberty to when a woman hits perimenopause, it's like your tank of estrogen has been like a tank of gas. You had a full tank. And the moment you go into perimenopause, that tank of gas begins to deplete. And there are parts of your brain all your life, they have been depending on the full tank of gas for it to operate. And so when the amygdala, the emotional center, is needing your full tank of estrogen, and you only get a quarter tank feeding that part of it, then you become irritable, then you become moody. Some women become aggressive, some women become depressed, some women deal with anxiety, and it's physiological. It's because it is not getting the support that it's been used to and it needs, and it's screaming, where's my estradiol, where's my estradiol? The same thing with the stem of a woman's brain. That's why she can't sleep. Women who deal with sleep and wake. There's another part, the hippocampus. That part is responsible for focus and concentration and memory. That's why we can't remember names sometimes. That's why we walk in a room and all of a sudden we're standing there trying to figure out, okay, Lord, what I come in this room for? It's because this estradiol has been helping your brain to function along with the vagina, along with that's why women get breast pain, etc. So many things she's responsible for. And when she begins to decline, it puts a work on not only the brain, but the rest of the body.
So tell me something. This estradiol that the woman may be missing, do you have an organic replacement for that?
Oh, yes, yes. I work with women with that. And one of the things I do is I do consultation for women. And what I do is I put together protocols for women based on their symptoms. Every woman's group of symptoms is different. You and me might have 10 of the same symptoms, while you might have another 5 that's different from my other 3. And so what I do is I put together protocols. And so if for women who they need something to replace their estradiol, you can just text me again, 439-3242, and just place estrogen replacement. And I'll know, when I get to my phone, how to respond to them. But yes, there is help. I tell women we have more control over our menopausal transition than we think. A lot of our symptoms we are triggering, believe it or not, by our lifestyles. And again, it's because we haven't been told. The women previously didn't pass it on to us. And so this generation of women, we are stumbling into menopause trying to figure out what in God's name happening. And then on top of that, this generation of women, we're professionals, we're still working, we have so much going on. And so much is going on in the life of a woman when she hits menopause, when she hits that menopausal transition. Let me just say, some women are dealing with elderly parents. They have responsibility for them. Some women have husbands that are sick that they're dealing with. Many women, they're dealing with issues in their marriage during this time, relational issues. Then we have women who are even on these jobs. They're only there because they can't afford to leave. They've invested too much in it. They will lose everything. And, the job market is not going to favor an older woman over a younger woman. A younger woman, they'd pay less. I mean, there's so many things. I've had clients who dealing with death of children, dealing with so many traumas in their life. They haven't had a chance to deal with the traumas. And because they go into menopause, the menopausal transition, it expresses itself in a lot of mental issues. And let me just say, women who've had mental issues previously in life, for 99% of these women, it shows up when they hit this menopausal transition stage. But yes, there is help. Again, I work with women to help them to understand there is so much you can do to help yourself.
Patrice, I have more questions.
Mhm.
Patrice, good afternoon. Thank you so much for this enlightening conversation this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to have the conversation. Do you have open forums? Where can I get a group of my ladies to have you come and have this conversation? Kendenique, thank you. Well, this person called my whole name. Kendenique, thank you. Thank you for bringing this on, and please know that you share and we share. I am also pre-menopausal, and I think that I'm going out of my mind. All right,
Yes. Oh,
let me
yeah.
read this. Let me read this as well, Patrice. This is another question. How do you navigate the silence and shame in our community around menopause when I feel like I'm suffering in secret? I'm not only suffering in secret because I don't have a female village, but I'm suffering in secret because whether you believe it or not, Kenny, whether you believe it or not, Kenny, the younger women are who we are in competition with. It used to be men when our men were on the down low. Not that they're not on the down low anymore, but we're in secret competition with these younger women that can give these men more of what it is that they think that they need. The BBL
Mhm.
nation has completely taken over. So am I then to compete with someone who has had a BBL? Am I then to compete with someone who is 22 while I'm 50 to do? I'm not in the position to go and have a BBL. Not that I'm not financially, but I simply won't do it because that's not a part of who I am. But I want you to know that we are in secret competition whether we believe it or not. And some of the things that you talk about I wish could be talked about in an open forum. Kenny, you had a forum the other day. Maybe you can have a menopause show and menopause live forum. But again, so many of us are in secret and in shame. No one will come and no one will ask the right questions. This is another question or comment. Why is hormone therapy rarely offered to women like me? And what natural or medical options actually work for Black women's bodies? I think you would have addressed that already, Patrice.
Mhm. Yes.
Okay, let me ask this next one. How do I know if what I'm experiencing is fatigue, brain fog, joint pain, is perimenopausal, and not something more serious that's being overlooked because I'm a Black woman without medical insurance? Damn.
Mm. Okay. There's so many. Okay. Let me start with that one. As long as you hit your 40, you hit the 40 mark, the body goes into that decline. And so many women waste money. When I first started here in the country, and you got to understand, being the first is interesting when no one is talking about it and you're the first, and then our medical doctors have not been trained. That's why I decided to study menopause, and I studied in the UK. I chose to study in the UK because the UK is so far ahead when it comes to menopause education, menopause in the workplace, the research, and I wanted to be aligned with so that whenever the research comes out, I have access to it. And now, okay, I'm trying to stay with all of the questions. I'm starting with your last question. But I want that person to know who was saying about competition. And I'm still trying to remember all of your questions and keep them in my head. The competition. You know what the answer is? Education. But us women have to bind together. Listen, I do sessions. I do women now. I do women when they have birthday parties. You know what they do? Instead of a birthday party, they call me in and they bring in their family and friends, and I do a presentation. I do presentations in the workplace for businesses. I do presentations for churches, for groups. My goal is to educate our women and change the way menopause is thought and talked about. So I am open. Call me. I will do it. I talk menopause in my sleep at this point because I'm so passionate about it, because I know what I went through and I know what I deal with these women. I deal with these women. Um, and let me tell you something. Menopause is no respecter of person. Whether you are a high ranking woman, whether you are an educator, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are a CPA, a law, I deal with them all, or your husband is an MP, or you are in politics, as long as you are a woman, menopause affects us. And I have been working on, I love to hear women who are on this show who would like to be a part of educating the country, the rest of the women. I have a team now. We're setting up, and our goal is menopause education in the country and in the Caribbean, because we have been filled with erroneous, wrong information. And the thing is, how you go through your menopause transition will determine how you age. That is another crazy thing because women don't understand when we hit our late 40s, we are naturally at risk for heart disease just because you're a woman, just because that estradiol went down. Is it any wonder why the number one mortality rate for women is heart disease? Listen here, if we understand, and we have not been connected, well, we've not been taught to connect the dot. And that's why I am passionate about it. So for you ladies who are on it, you have groups of women. I am available. I am open to speak, to do sessions. Let me know for those of you who are interested. Maybe if a number of you have a couple of groups, I can bring you all together and do a session. But my goal is to educate women. And then I tell women when they finish these sessions, you are to take this information and begin to tell your daughter. To talk about menopause in the workplace. I tell women that the men aren't going to do it. It's us. They don't go through menopause. Now they are impacted by menopause, and I can tell you, for the women who said that we're in menopausal women are in competition. Listen, it's about education because I can tell you, menopause men have called me on the down low in this country trying to figure out what was going on, and I've had to help them. I've helped them maneuver and understand what's going on and how to help them. I do sessions with marriage ministries bring me in, and I speak to both men and women. Sometimes when I do sessions, the husbands are in the session with the wife. One gentleman said to me the other day, now I understand. Now I know what to do. Now I know how to help my wife. It's a matter of education. Because if you don't know, much less a man does not know. So it does not have to be about competing, but the thing we have on with us is education. Education. Older women, we are wiser. So let's educate our husbands. Let's educate our brothers. Let's educate our nieces, our children. Let's talk about it in the workplace. One of the things I'm trying to break the barrier for in our country is that menopause needs to be talked about in the workplace. We need policies in place. When I was in the corporate world, when I was going through that not sleeping, I worked in the corporate world where I was the one of two women in this area. So I had to show up every day to work and I had to leave my problems behind. And I worked in an area where the men were from all over the world. So your problems, you better leave them at the door. And I had a foreign boss. And one day we were having a meeting. And the men were from, again, all over the world, Europe, USA, the Caribbean, the Bahamas. I intentionally sat in the back of the room because I wasn't sleeping. My boss was hosting the meeting. My boss stopped in the middle of the meeting and said, Patrice, stop sleeping. The entire boardroom, black, white, and in between, all turned around and were looking at me. That was one of the most humiliating times in my life. And I then, because of what was going on, to save my job, I had to go in and I had to talk to my boss. And I had to tell him what's going on. And you know what saved my job? The fact that his wife was going through the same thing. And he said to me, they told her she was dealing with anxiety. I had to show up on that job every day, even though I wasn't sleeping, even though it was days on end. And you know what? Workplaces cannot get 100% resting or sleeping properly. There is going to be room for much. There's going to be room. Safety is going to be compromised. Even relationships, dealing with your customers, internal and external, will be impacted. We need to deal with menopause in the workplace, and that also I am open to. But ladies listening, it won't happen until you make it happen. The man won't do it. The man won't do it. You and me, it's the women banding together. I will come in and I will do the presentations. I educate them. I help with policies, etc., in the workplace when it comes to menopause. And it is something that globally is being done now. And it's in the books politically. Many politics in political arenas throughout the UK are dealing with menopause at a policy level, organizations as well.
Patrice, we have our time has come to an end. We have so many more questions. I think that we may need to do a part two, maybe next week if I can get that off with you, for speaking with us this evening. And again, this is another show that I sent Chris, my wonderful engineer. I sent Chris a whole medley of songs that were supposed to be played today, but we talked, Patrice. I mean, I think you gave everybody a wealth of knowledge, and we are very, very grateful for that. Ladies and gents, those of you that are within the sound of my voice, this is another sexy Tuesday evening, an opportunity for you to have some coconut oil and like Patrice said, take care of the honey lounge. Massage the honey lounge. Do what needs to be done to make sure that your intimacy and your communication is good. Specialist, communication doesn't only happen verbally, it's non-verbally, it's body language, it's signals. And so take the time to learn your partner, get your coconut oil, grab yourself some popcorn and some good wine tonight, and it's always sexy on a Tuesday evening. So have a good Tuesday evening. Patrice, I may need you back next week Tuesday. Are you available for me?
Yes, I'm open next Tuesday.
Oh man, this may be a part two of just sex and menopause. So thank you so much, Patrice. And for those of you that need more information, you can inbox me like you've inboxed me your questions. I do have Patrice's number. And Patrice, go ahead and give your number one more time to our listening audience, please.
It's 43242. 439-3242.
All right. Thank you so much, Patrice. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Kenny's Corner, Guardian 96.9. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Sitting around, waiting for a promotion. Don't you know, talking about a revolution sound.